Welcome to your MCAT Science Review session on the behavioral science of stress. My name is Eli Schwartz, and I'll be leading you through today's content. First, I'll introduce a big picture view of what stress entails overall, then go through each step of the process, starting with the primary and secondary appraisal and evaluation. Then, the two main types of stressors you're expected to know for the MCAT, the responses one's body initiates to those stressors, and the social responses emotionally and behaviorally to the stressors. And finally, the two groups of coping mechanisms you're expected to know for the MCAT. Additionally, today's session has two major learning goals. Through this session, you'll gain the skills to describe the impetus and result of stress and identify the steps of the process and types of stressors. You'll see how we could answer questions like this, or similar ones, on the MCAT. Stress is our response to any challenging event, be it large or small, but first we need to process that there is a stress at all. For any situation where there is some new input, there must be an initial cognitive assessment of that event. For example, maybe you're entering through a door to a room that you've never been in before. If the room happens to be one you've actually seen before and nothing is new, then that triggers an irrelevant response and there is no new stress. Or if the room contains just a bundle of balloons, maybe that triggers a benign positive appraisal. But maybe the room is filled with poisonous snakes. In that case, this is certainly a stressful scenario, and we immediately move to the second cognitive assessment. If a snake has also already bitten you, there could already be harm, and you are assessing the damage that has already been caused. If they're only rising up and moving towards you, there's a threat of future damage that the event could cause. And finally, it's possible that you have a vested interest in going into that room due to some sort of profit from the experience, or perhaps you have life experiences, or anti-venom perhaps, that gives you the confidence to overcome the stressful situation. After this initial round, reappraisals occur as a continuous reevaluation of the situation as new information changes. A stressor, while generally thought of as a negative thing, is actually any response to a challenging biological element, external condition, or event. An environmental factor, such as there being snow falling from the sky, could inspire positive stress in one person and negative stress in another. This means that there are two very different types of stressor that we can experience: eustress and distress. Eustress is the positive version of any event, condition, or element that forces us to adapt or challenge our lifestyle. Winning the lottery is a eustress because it's a significant change and readjustment and remains positive overall. Distress is the negative version that is often casually called stress in everyday life. Getting into a car accident is distress because it's causing significant harm or monetary loss or life-changing adjustment and is negative overall. How would this example stack up on the eustress and distress scales? Getting a high MCAT score would certainly be very positive and has no tangible negative stresses attached to it. It's important to note that not all situations, even on the MCAT, will be that straightforward. Often a given situation can have both positive eustress and negative distress components. In this example, there may be significant reasons to be upbeat about moving to that new city, but also just as significant reasons to feel concerned about the move in the first place. Let's suppose that you are about to open the door to that room you imagined earlier. Right before opening it, you should ideally be at a normal level of stress resistance based on your surroundings. We could consider this to be your stress homeostasis at that normal level. Now, you open the door and directly inside you find a rhinoceros staring back at you. Initially, your body goes into shock and responds via the sympathetic nervous system, putting all available resources into reacting to this stress. While this is often thought of as fight or flight, the first stage is really just the body alarm going off, starting the cascade of a response. The pituitary secretes ACTH to stimulate the adrenal glands to produce cortisol to maintain blood sugar levels, and the adrenal medulla secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine to keep the sympathetic nervous system activated. These are the major hormones you need to know for the alarm stage for the MCAT. At this point, you're actually on to stage 2, and in fact, your body is overcompensating above your normal stress level in its effort to either remain and engage in a fight with the stressor or flee as quickly as possible. It's this elevated mental acuity, increased heart rate, and readied immune system that, depending on your personal challenge level, allows you to choose to fight that rhinoceros or run away. Stage 1 and 2 combined is your total acute response to a stress and that fight or flight. If the acute stressor remains prolonged, though, this then leads to stage 3, exhaustion. Perhaps you decide to flee the rhinoceros, but it gives chase, and you run at your fastest possible pace as if your life literally depended on it for 10 to 20 minutes non-stop. At this point, the sympathetic system simply can't maintain the elevated response, and burnout or breakdown will occur. Similarly, stage 3 can be reached through a chronic stressor instead of an acute one. If every room that you open has a rhinoceros in it for some reason, this can lead to an elevated total blood pressure, increased risk of mental impairment, and slower immune response through chronic stressing of the body. Besides these physiological responses, there are also psychological effects as well. For the MCAT, you would be expected to know 2 major response types. Emotionally, a person subjected to constant or chronic stress can affect feelings of moodiness, irritability, fear, and helplessness. Behaviorally, a person may also have difficulty with memory or concentration, may withdraw from others, or have difficulty in social interactions, and in extreme situations may develop substance abuse problems or a consistently altered mental state. The strategies for coping with a stressor fall into 2 categories. Problem-focused involves working to overcome the obstacle or challenge, perhaps confronting the issue directly or creating a plan to solve this and similar problems through actions. If you keep experiencing a rhinoceros in every room, maybe you bring a trained safari guide with you everywhere for support, or create some new defense measure. Emotionally focused centers on updating how you feel about the obstacle or challenge, perhaps distancing yourself from the issue or trying to think about a possible upside from the stress. In the rhinoceros example, maybe you think about how nice it is that it's not venomous snakes. And since it's so large, it's going to have a hard time maneuvering and have trouble chasing you. Additionally, the management of a stressor, in order to reduce its overall effect, can fall into 2 extremes. An adaptive strategy aims to lower stress while improving health and well-being. Exercise, for example, releases endorphins and opioid neuropeptides to make you feel better overall and less stressed. A maladaptive strategy aims to lower stress but may degrade health or well-being. Turning to drugs or alcohol, for example, may decrease the stress initially but result in different or increased stress later. At this point, the major stress content that will be tested on the MCAT has been covered. It's time to do some questions. For this MCAT problem, there are several hints that the question stem provides. First, an ER doctor is a stressful occupation. 14-hour shifts is a significant toll in number of hours, especially overnight, and this has continued for a month. This indicates prolonged chronic stress. Since the question asks for least likely, that also means that 3 of the answers are likely results, but 1 will stand out as opposite, or at the very least, be unrelated to chronic stress. B is that match. She would certainly not have increased concentration, which would only be from an acute initial response to a stress. A, C, and D are all common concerns for someone experiencing chronic stress, and therefore must be false. This MCAT question is really asking for recognition of some key terms. Having both a positive and a negative set of stressors means that they are both eustressing and distressing, which matches directly with answer D. While it's possible that certain stressors could have positive reappraisal, as A says, it's not required for all of them. B misses the positive aspects that were specifically mentioned in the question stem, and C is a coping mechanism, instead of a classification of the initial stressors. The response of the body and mind to an event is what defines stress. This can be a positive eustress or a negative distress. In order to process the challenge, there must be stress appraisal. In the primary appraisal, a potential threat can be classified as either irrelevant, benign positive, or actually stressful. In the secondary appraisal, only if stressful, the ability to cope with the stress is evaluated based on current harm, threat, and challenge. Along with a continuous reappraisal, this initiates a response called the general adaptation syndrome. Initial alarm and resistance encompasses the fight or flight response from an acute stress, and terminal exhaustion from a prolonged or chronic stress is the final response phase. Additionally, depending on certain factors, coping with this stress can be dealt with in a problem or emotionally focused method, and stress management can be either overall beneficial or not, depending on the behavioral adaptations chosen. Thank you for attending the MCAT Science Review of Stress with me, Eli Schwartz. I hope that you continue your effort towards that eustress of a higher MCAT score, and good luck studying.